Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this live stream, streaming directly from Brisbane to your device wherever you may be. Well, in Brisbane, it is a beautiful day here, sunny, temperature a little bit cold, 14 degrees today. So 14 degrees and sunny and remaining that way virtually, right throughout the day. Well, right now, once again, welcome to this Monday, the 19th of July, and what a weekend it was. There was so much that's been happening and taking place in and around Brisbane. First of all, we will look at the arrival of our new Indian High Commissioner, His Excellency Manpreet Boraji, and he arrived at Brisbane, and there was a group of community leaders, meeting him on Saturday. And that meeting was facilitated by the Federation of Indian Communities of Queensland. So here's some of the glimpses. Of course, due to COVID, people had to sit in all the different locations, and there he is addressing everyone at that venue, the venue being the Red Cross Centre in Milton. Again, quite a nice venue for everyone to go. So he is a bit of what he had to say.
Mention your date of birth.
Well, I think everybody can gauge that.
Why would I mention the date of birth? Because they say such a young High Commissioner we have now.
Oh, no. I might be able to fool, my age, but no, I'm not all that young anymore. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming here this afternoon. It is a Saturday, I realize, and not perhaps the best day to tear yourself away from your weekend and your family and times with children, grandchildren, spouse. But to an extent, I suppose Saturday is easier also to tear yourself away from the normal routine of work. In either case, I'm grateful to all of you for making this effort to come and greet me.
Of course, after meeting everyone here in Brisbane, he also went to Gold Coast, and of course a lunch function which was hosted by our Gold Coast Gopio chapter, and as you can see, all the members of Gopio Gold Coast hosted the lunch for him. And it was wonderful to see that Archanaji could also join in with Gopio Gold Coast for that lunch function. That was the visit of the new Indian High Commissioner, His Excellency Manpreet Boraji, and his first interstate visit, as he mentioned, his first interstate visit, and which happened to be in Queensland and coming to Brisbane. And he said that they got on the flight, and the flight was supposed to be direct flight from Canberra to Brisbane, but it got diverted and went through and came via Sydney. And of course, when they arrived in Brisbane, all the security measures took in place, and he said he was lucky not to be put in quarantine. So that's that. And then after that, there was the National Mandela Day, which was held, which was yesterday. Of course, we all know it was yesterday, but the celebration at Queensland Parliament House that took place on Saturday night. And once again, a very wonderful celebration, as you can see. And whenever we have an African function, of course, we know that music, goes without saying that the African drumming, music, and song and dance is always there and accompanying. And he is the team members, advisors, and committee members of IPA, which is Australian, African Associates. And Robert Mokambuzi, the chief organizer, and of course Minister Leanne Linnard addressing everyone there as the host as well at for the venue, and Senator Paul Iskar addressing everyone there as well. And of course, John Paul Langbrook, JP, as we know. He did quite a nice speech there as well. And of course, our own councillor, Angela Owen. And followed by Christine Castley of Multicultural Australia, proudly sponsoring the event and being part of the event as well. And at the end, everyone were given tokens of appreciation, and I thought that was quite nice. And of course, Leanne Leonard always joining in with the multicultural community and supporting all the functions and events. So that's a very short weekend roundup of things that have been taking place in and around Brisbane. Well, right now, let's go and take a look at what's making news, broadly. And as we know that at this point in time, everyone is looking at all these cases in Melbourne and Sydney. Let's go to Sydney first.
Good morning, everybody. And can I start by thanking everybody for their patience yesterday. I can appreciate what a shock and what a frustrating set of circumstances it was for many in the community. And I'm deeply grateful that the feedback we have had to date has been constructive. People want to support us in getting through this lockdown as soon as we can to allow individuals, families and businesses to bounce back. We know this Delta strain is so difficult to deal with. It's like nothing we've dealt with before in New South Wales. And I just really want to deeply thank all sections of the community who are working hard together with us to make sure we beat this thing. And we're throwing everything at it, all of our resources, all of the restrictions that we think are appropriate for where they're required. And I just want to thank everybody for working together to achieve that aim. Yesterday, pleasingly, we had, again, nearly 67,000 tests. It demonstrates that even on weekends and during those times of the week when those testing rates haven't been that high, that people are coming forward. Unfortunately, we still had 105 cases of community transmission, and 27 of those cases were infectious in the community, so they were still active in the community, and that's the number that worries us the most. We've seen that number crop up day in and day out, and as we've explained previously, we won't see the effects of these harsher restrictions until at least 5 or 6 days, because there's a lag in the data. So we don't expect to see that number shift massively for the next few days, but we still want the community to be more vigilant than ever before, because I'm convinced that working together we will start to see those numbers nudge, and we are throwing all of our resources and all of our efforts to making that happen. And I just want to thank the community for their cooperation. Yesterday, as we were going through all the health orders, as we're going through all the exemptions, the information is now available on the Service New South Wales website. So if anybody has any questions or any concerns, please go through Service New South Wales to have those concerns addressed, or any questions that you might have.
See that people coming out even on the weekend to get tested, and it is wonderful to see that everyone is cooperating, and it is very hard circumstances, but we really need to deal with it. But the good news is we've got 1 million doses of Pfizer which has arrived.
Federal Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews joins us now from Canberra. Minister, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to get onto the vaccine rollout in just a moment, but first to this breaking news. Overnight, the federal government has cancelled the visa of far-right British commentator Katie Hopkins. We all saw her boasting over the weekend of flouting quarantine rules, potentially putting health workers and police at risk. What did you make of her antics?
I thought it was just shameful. The fact that she was out there boasting about breaching quarantine was just appalling. It was a slap in the face for all those Australians who are currently in lockdown, and it's just unacceptable behaviour. So personally, I'm very pleased she'll be leaving.
How quickly will she be put on a plane?
Well, the ABF, the Australian Border Force, acted very quickly to make sure that the visa on which she entered was cancelled. So there was obviously a bit of a process that we needed to follow with that. We will be getting her out of the country as soon as we can possibly arrange that. So I'm hopeful that that it will happen imminently.
Isn't there a character test for visas to get into the country? This is a woman who has called migrants cockroaches, has called for a final solution, has described Islam as repulsive. repugnant. How on earth, Minister, was she let into the country given a visa by the federal government in the first place?
Well, she actually came into the country with support of a state government. This does happen from time to time, and actually it happens reasonably regularly, that state governments approach the federal government on the basis that there is an economic benefit to some people coming in over the quarantine caps, and the quarantine caps then are a matter for the states to handle. So she came in here on the basis of potential benefit to the economy.
Right, but the government had to sign
off
on the visa, though, and how on earth was she deemed a person of good character?
Well, she's clearly not someone that we want to keep in this country for a second longer than we have to.
But the question is, why was the initial decision made to let her in the first place?
Well, there are very well-established processes and procedures for people to enter this country, and many decisions are made on the basis of economic benefit. Now, for all those Australians out there that are watching this, I'm with you. It's appalling that this individual behaved the way that she did, and she will be leaving, without a doubt. I will continue to work with state and territory governments. We do need people to be able to come into this country where there is an economic benefit for them to do so, and people will be supported to come into the country where states are sponsoring them effectively on the basis of economic benefit.
OK, let's turn to the Pfizer arrivals. A lot of viewers will be very happy to see those crates of the vaccine arriving at the airports overnight. How big, dare I say, is this a shot in the arm for the federal government? You've had lots of troubles with the vaccine rollout.
Well, it's a shot in the arm for Australians coming in overnight. So almost 1 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine came in, and of course we are manufacturing here in Australia the AstraZeneca vaccine. So this is a very, very positive sign, actual evidence that people can see of the vaccination ramp up happening here in Australia. So close to 1 million doses overnight. We will be looking to bring in about 1 million doses per week of the Pfizer vaccine. And how that translates in numbers is it was planned that there would be about 2.8 million doses administered in August. That will ramp up to about 4.5 million. So it is a significant step up. But congratulations also to the Australian people who have rolled up their sleeves, because their numbers are increasing also.
The Same Time News poll this morning, Minister, has only 40% of Australians satisfied with the federal government's handling of the vaccine rollout. That is down a massive 13 percentage points in just 3 months. You've got a ways to go, haven't you, to really instil public confidence in what you're doing?
Well, what we have to do as a government is make sure that people understand that there are vaccines arriving into this country. The Pfizer vaccine, 1 million doses almost arriving overnight. That will continue. We do have the AstraZeneca vaccine being produced here. I want people to have confidence that they will be able to get their vaccine, encourage them to go online and to register to get their vaccines. I want people to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We all understand that we've all been doing our best to get as many vaccines as we can, either produced or imported into the country. But that is happening now, so there is that light at the end of the tunnel.
I want to finish with arrivals and departures again. The Queensland Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, is on her way to Tokyo to bid for the 2032 Games. As a minister, and I guess as a Queenslander too, in your view, should she have gone?
Well, the Games are very important, and the economic benefit to Queensland, particularly southeast Queensland, but all of Australia, is considered to be significant. There was a lot of concern about the hypocrisy of the Queensland Premier, while she was on one hand arguing that hotel quarantine caps should be reduced, that she is taking herself off overseas and will be bringing herself back in over the quarantine caps and going into hotel quarantine. That's a matter now for her to respond to, but many Australians are unimpressed with the hypocrisy.
Karen Andrews in Canberra, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us as well. As we know, that the first point that raised there was the cancellation of that visa. And of course, see what an appalling thing for Lady Kate to go online and say that she's managed to get out and that she has bypassed the quarantine and all those things. And of course, being as vocal as she is and as right as she is, always. And how was she let into the country was the question. The minister did not answer that. The minister did say that she did come on a state-sponsored visa. Which state she did not say, but she did mention that it was of economic benefit to that state. But right now, following her actions, her visa has been cancelled, and the due processes are taking place to make sure that she leaves the country as soon as possible. The good news is that over 1 million doses of Pfizer has arrived, and that is now which will go into circulation as well. So which is a good news as well. And the third news, of course, covering there is Queensland Premier's visit to secure the bid for Brisbane. Well, people are saying that it's a bid for Brisbane. Of course, we know our Lord Mayor Adrian Strina is there as well, looking at his post this morning of Mount Fuji, which he posted this morning. And then the Premier also accompanying, and there were calls about why was she needed to go, but once again, we cannot leave any stone unturned in making sure that even though it looks like the deal is done, it's secured, it's a one-man horse race, as they reckon, but even then, it really needs to come home. That announcement needs to be made. It needs to be official. So that's what's going to be happening. Well, right now we'll go to Western Australia, where a cargo ship is carrying, the crewmen on board are suspected to be COVID positive.
This morning came familiar news for West Australians. A cargo ship planning to dock in Kwinana arrived with 7 of its 14 crew showing COVID symptoms.
We are assuming COVID-19 is on board this ship, so every precaution will be taken.
The BBC California left Indonesia last Sunday amid a rapidly deteriorating COVID outbreak in that country. WA Health says she'll stay anchored off gauge roads until a spot becomes available at Fremantle Port. That's not expected to happen until tomorrow morning, when health authorities will be able to board the ship. It's a different approach to the MV Emerald Inda, which was ordered out of WA waters earlier this month. Mr McGowan says this time the ship has to dock because of the number of sick crew.
You imagine they're on the high seas or cruising along the coast of Western Australia and the entire crew can't operate the ship. Well, then that is a maritime emergency.
Earlier this week, WA brought back a hard border with Victoria, but St Kilda players were allowed in last night ahead of next weekend's game against the Eagles. The Nurses Union doesn't think the game should go ahead with crowds.
I don't want to see a football game in Perth becoming a super spreader event where we have to lock down the entire state.
The visitors are under strict rules, only allowed to leave their hotel to train and play. But the Union State Secretary says his main concern is what a possible outbreak would mean for WA's hospitals.
It's going to push our health system over the edge.
He says a particular concern is the state's vaccination rate, with less than 11% of the eligible population vaccinated. The Premier says the next stage in the rollout will be a new vaccination hub in the CBD, once additional supply of Pfizer is delivered. He says international borders will eventually be lifted and has urged people to think about what that means for them.
If you choose not to get vaccinated in that environment, well then that is your choice, but the consequence can be dire.
He says the government's aim is for 80% of West Australians to be vaccinated. Kian Burke, ABC News.
And of course, as the Premier there mentioned, that if you don't want to be vaccinated, that is your choice. But also, you have to look at what your actions are going to do, or what would that mean for the wider community and for community at large as well. Well, right now, from Western Australia, let's cross over to Victoria now.
Well, I don't want to be drawn into a kind of implied criticism of New South Wales, but I'm not assuming, I don't think anybody in New South Wales is assuming that what they're going through is going to be over or really in any way changed by midnight Tuesday. They're in it for the long haul, I would have thought. What we hope to be able to achieve is to deal with these couple of outbreaks with the cooperation of the Victorian community. Painful, challenging, but 5 days, or a shorter lockdown is much better than a longer one. Put it to another way, what's going on in New South Wales is not going to be over by midnight Tuesday. That's going to be something that we have to live with. something that we have to guard against for quite some period of time. That's why we wish them success. We wish them nothing but success. And if to Anna's point earlier, if we can provide help down the track, then of course we would. Because as soon as they get their wave, their outbreak under fundamental control, the less likely it is that cases come here. So I don't think that our current measures are not based on New South Wales, other than of course they're based on cases that have come from New South Wales. But once we get this under control, we're going to go back to doing what we were doing, defending against more cases coming here.
And of course, it has come from New South Wales, so they need to keep up that and monitor that. Well, Dr. Catherine Bennett explains how the Delta variant will impact on Victoria's restriction.
Let's return to our top story this morning on the lockdowns in New South Wales and Victoria and the arrival of 1 million doses of Pfizer. Catherine Bennett is Chair of Epidemiology at Deakin University and she joins us now from Melbourne. Catherine, as always, thank you for your time for News Breakfast.
Morning.
Let's get stuck into what's happening in Melbourne first of all, because the headlines this morning are suggesting the lockdown will be extended. You've had a look at the exposure sites, the numbers that we're seeing. What's your thoughts on that?
It's just incredible. This particular variant, Delta variant, that we're seeing in both New South Wales and Victoria is just extraordinary in the rapidity of spread and how many of those people exposed go on to acquire the virus and as we've seen, pass it on in their own clusters very quickly. So that does translate, unfortunately, to a growth each day in those exposure sites. We know that on average, the day before yesterday they reported people were out for 1.7 days on average before they're identified as cases. That's exactly what New South Wales went through in the early days of the outbreak as well, when they knew where the cases would be, but even then we couldn't get on top of them. So I do think we are in a really difficult situation, so close to needing to make a call on lockdown, but at the same time today's incoming numbers associated with particularly these new exposure sites we've seen in the last day or two and the ones overnight, there's a lot of high risk exposure sites just in that lead up to lockdown that are still being processed. So I think they will be reluctant to be able to open up if in fact we're still waiting on test results on people who were exposed before we went into lockdown.
Yeah, and it's moving so quickly, isn't it, Catherine? And it's the young and mobile that seem to be driving the transmission, and of course they're the ones that are yet to be vaccinated.
Look, that's right. I mean, we have seen a number of cases now linked to the sporting events and then associated social events around that. And so that has moved it very quickly. And of course, it's moved it in and out of Melbourne. You know, people have come in for sporting events, and we saw the case yesterday announced that will be counted today, but there was a Mildura person returning home after the game. And now we've seen the exposure sites overnight with that. So it is the challenge that not everyone gets infectious very quickly, but enough people are exposed in that first exposure to an index case, and enough of those are infectious within 24 to 48 hours, again, exactly as described in Sydney, and that just makes it impossible, even with the best contact tracing, to get on top of it. So the critical thing for us is, while we're still at this early stage, having learnt from what happened in Sydney, that we have to really push hard now to find everyone exposed who could be a case while we still have a good grasp on where those exposure sites are, because that's...
Well, of course, we need to get a good grasp of where these exposure sites are to move on. Well, right now, if we were to move out of this lockdown, what would our pathway be? So let's take a look at that report.
Around 2 million West Australians in the Perth and Peel regions have spent 12 days in lockdown this year, 5 days in February, then 2 shorter stay-at-home orders in April and June-July. The Southwest region has had just 1 5-day lockdown. None of the lockdowns were extended. Tens of thousands of people were tested and the virus didn't spread. But there's a cost. Treasury says February's 5-day lockdown cost the WA economy around $120 million. April's 3-day shutdown cost about $70 million. It's too early to say what economic impact the most recent 4-day lockdown has had. Peak business groups, however, estimate the total economic cost of the 12 days in lockdown is over $100 million more. The state government has already committed $116 million in support relief for impacted charities and business. While some epidemiologists argue WA has called snap lockdowns too early, one economist says the cost of a serious outbreak could have been far worse.
Go early, go hard, lock down for a sufficient period of time to make sure you're not having people who are infectious in the community, and then open up as soon as it's practical.
The Chamber of Commerce and Industry says it's becoming tougher for business to cope. A recent survey found 1 in 10 believe they wouldn't survive another lockdown. What's harder to quantify is the unseen social consequences. Experts say isolation, loneliness, plus the uncertainty and disruptions of snap lockdowns can have an impact on mental health. So when will snap lockdowns end in WA? Well, that depends on the state's vaccination rate. WA's Chief Health Officer Andy Robertson wants 80% of the state's population to be vaccinated before reconsidering snap lockdowns and border restrictions. He believes that target may be met by the end of the year, subject to supply and other factors. The most recent federal health figures show 10.5% of WA's population is fully vaccinated so far, the lowest number of any state or territory. The Northern Territory has the highest vaccination rate of 22%, followed by the ACT, 19%, and Tasmania, where 18% of its population is vaccinated. WA's rate may have been impacted by COVID complacency, vaccine hesitancy, and national vaccine supply.
There are those under 40 who want to have the vaccine, but they just can't actually book a place because there's not enough vaccine supply.
Public health experts say reaching an 80% target this year is ambitious but not impossible.
It's not impossible, and as was said before, that there is not enough doses. Well, right now the good news is that last night 1 million doses of Pfizer has come in. And talking about Pfizer vaccine, the JP Sony and his wife are booked in for 21st of July with Dr. Jimmy Wang of Mount Gravatt for the Pfizer vaccine. So yeah, and I am still waiting for my second one because we've had the first dose of AstraZeneca. So it's good to see the community doing everything that they can. Well, right now, when we're living in times like this, people are very innovative. People are adaptive. They adapt to the circumstances and many things. Sometimes, well, as they say, that the necessity is the mother of invention. So, how innovative are we during times like this? It always takes a small businessman to come up with ideas.
Well, as businesses in Sydney and Victoria adapt to lockdown restrictions, restaurants have had to pivot to takeaway service only. And this impacts the staffing and operations of many eateries, which have also seen a decline in the number of customers. Well, to give us an insight into how the restrictions is affecting his venue, we're now speaking to Joe Gambakota, owner of the Little Cup and Saucer in Canterbury, Sydney. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us on Weekend Breakfast. Joe, as I understand it, your eatery is situated in one of these areas of concern in Canterbury. There have been stricter regulations that have been placed to curb movement in the area. Are you seeing fewer people move around now?
Oh, definitely. It's really impacted on the community. People are unsure of what they can and cannot do. There's a really somber mood in the community at the moment.
How are they feeling about these rising numbers of infection cases?
Well, I think they're a little bit frightened, actually. There's a lot of tension in the air, and people a lot of uncertainty about where they can and cannot go, and what movement they're able to do. So yeah, it's a lot of uncertainty in the air, definitely.
So, Joe, the lockdown is already affecting many businesses. How will these new restrictions to try to stop people from moving about, how do you think that is going to impact your restaurant?
Well, today will be the first day that people are unable to leave their community. So I think it would be very detrimental to us today. I'm solely reliant on my community to support me. So, yeah, I think today will be pretty detrimental to us. But I'm very fortunate to have a community behind me that supports me. So I'm sure there'll be a few people in to get the takeaway coffee.
Joe, how have you adapted to this lockdown? Have you had to make many changes to staffing, to your operations? Obviously, you can't have customers come in and sit.
No. So we're just entirely relying on takeaway only. So a lot of people are calling in beforehand and ringing over the phone and picking up outside. And yeah, so staffing levels that I've basically got myself and another 2 staff on. So it's a third of us normally working that would normally work. It's myself and 2 staff. Normally there would be 6 to 7 of us on a weekend. So it's impacted their lives as well. It's just, yeah, it's not a good situation to be in.
No, it isn't. Have you had to change your menu as well, Joe? I wonder, because I looked up your menu and I saw fantastic shashuka eggs that you do offer. I wonder whether there are many people who are actually ordering takeaway shakshuka eggs now. And have you had to change your menu to adapt to the lockdown?
Simplify it, definitely. So it's just to keep less stock on hand and keep it fresher. We've had to reduce the size of the menu and make it more transportable. So unfortunately, things like shashuka eggs are off the menu at the moment.
Well, that's unfortunate. I think a lot of people will be upset about that. What about produce? Have you had to change, you know?
Well, as he mentioned that shashuka eggs would be off the menu, yes, that would be difficult to transport at this point in time. So, ladies and gentlemen, so that's been quite a weekend. So, you know, having a look at some of the things that took place in the weekend, as I mentioned before, that we had the African where they played the Mandela's Day. And that took place at the Queensland Parliament House, and of course we know that it was very well attended, and many people were in attendance. Of course, Minister Leon Linnard there with Senator Paul Scar, both been given with special prizes for that as well. And of course we had the visit of our new Indian High Commissioner to Australia, His Excellency Manpreet Vohra, and of course he visited not only Brisbane, he also visited Gold Coast as well. So, you know, it was good to see him, and of course his short address to the community there as well. Let's hear from him.
Mention your date of birth.
Well, I think everybody can gauge that.
If I would have mentioned the date of birth because they say such a young High Commissioner we have now.
Oh, no. I might be able to fool, my age, but no, I'm not all that young anymore. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming here this afternoon. It is a Saturday, I realize, and not perhaps the best day to tear yourself away from your weekend and your family and times with children, grandchildren, spouse. But to an extent, I suppose Saturday is easier also to tear yourself away from the normal routine of work. In either case, I'm grateful to all of you for making this effort to come and greet me.
So as he mentioned that he was grateful for people to come there and greet him and meet him as well. And quite, we can see that he will be very well connected with the community. And after that, yesterday he had a lunch function with our Gopio chapter in Gold Coast. So the Gopio Gold Coast hosted a lunch for him. So he's been meeting the community here and Gold Coast, of course, assisted by our Honorary Counsel for India in Queensland, Mrs. Archana J. Right now, let's take a look at some of the functions and events that are taking place. But before we do that, here's a message from our sponsors for the segment.
GlobeNet Realty, GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world. Don't forget that on Wednesday we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra. And of course, this Wednesday it will not be at 10 o'clock, but probably at 9 o'clock to get things moving because of few things. And of course, there are few meetings and things that will be happening in Brisbane. We'll bring to you all those updates. Right now, here's a message from Maya Tom Tate of Gold Coast about Gopio.
Wonderful to be here tonight to celebrate Gopio, and with all our Indian friends. There's one thing we've got on the Gold Coast: we are so blessed. We're blessed with wonderful weather, we're blessed with the way we've handled pandemic, and we're so blessed with the Indian society that is so generous to help not just Indian descent but also the wider community. So here's celebration. I love being here.
And a similar message was by our new incoming High Commissioner as well, that very proud of what the Queensland Indian community and the diaspora is doing. Well, of course, we know that Gopio, Queensland is planning on the India Day Fair, and the planning is coming on very, very nicely with our event management partner company, Equitis, and the guidance there of Pavitra Nuriji. Well, it is a function and an event which is for the whole family. So, we've heard from the mayor. Well, right now, what about the youngsters? So, he is young Ishana, inviting all the young ones to come as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Ishana Chandra and I would like to invite you to Gopio Queensland's India Day Fair at South Bank Piazza on the 15th of August. A free, fun-filled family event celebrating India's independence, a new venue and bigger, bolder programming. See you all there!
And of course, yes, we will be seeing you all there. So don't forget that this year the event will be at Suncorp Piazza, which is a much better venues, the South Bank Piazza, undercover, and of course is quite manageable in terms of crowd monitoring, which is required under the current restrictions, for the tracing, and of course to monitor who has come in. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for in today's this segment. It's wonderful to have your company, and don't forget that the real estate update this week on Wednesday will be at 9 a.m. rather than 10 a.m. If we are able to bring it at 10 a.m., we will let you know, but most probably at this point in time, it looks like going ahead at 9 a.m. So once again, it's been wonderful having your company with the weekend, rep and the updates. As I mentioned, there's lots happening. There's a few other functions and events which we haven't covered on today's one. We will bring some clips and glimpses later in the week as well, because we can't have too many, otherwise in the limited time it becomes too rushed. Well, right now it's goodbye from me. Until tomorrow, enjoy the rest of the day, where outside here in Brisbane the temperature now is 15 degrees and sunny throughout the day. Until tomorrow is goodbye from me. Be happy and remain safe.